Hey there, welcome back. In this video I'm just going to be taking care of a little bit more of assembly, just generic stuff that needs to go on. I'll probably get the handlebars all finalized. That means adjusting all the choke cables and as well as the two throttle cables now that those carburetors installed. And then I'll just continue doing some wrapping to the headlight lighting. Okay, so we're going to be doing things a little bit different this time. I'm just going to be watching the video and just kind of commenting on stuff as we go. I actually haven't watched this video for quite a long time. I kind of made it a few weeks ago and I've actually had the bike running since. So in the next video I'll actually show the starting of it. So I apologize in advance if any of the commentary is rather boring. But you can see me starting on the, continuing on the wiring. I'm dealing with the headlight wiring right now and then some of the front stuff, trying to get everything set up and oriented in the right spot so that when I stick all the different parts on the motorcycle, it can move and turn the wheel and do all the things it's supposed to do. Working as well just simultaneously with the handlebar components. Here I have the two throttle cables that are going to be going to the right side of the handlebar, feeding those through, and then I'll be attaching them to the actual handlebar, like the start-stop switch in the handlebar, throttle cable component, I guess, the housing. This took a little bit because the throttle cables were pretty stiff. I wasn't sure what the exact lengths were, needing to kind of adjust as we go, just so that the throttle, when it's closed, has the right amount of pull wire and push wire in the boating cables. I think I took a break once I had those kind of loosely fitted on. I didn't do the final adjustment, but now I started moving on to the delivery of the fuel from the fuel pump that I installed, I believe, in the last video. So the fuel pump assembly was something that I actually created just because I've had a couple times where the electronics in my fuel pumps, the stock and the OEM fuel pumps, have shorted out in heavy rain. They're just not built very well. This is the last bike that Honda had that was carbureted, so I decided to make a new mount that would bring the fuel pump kind of inside and up out of where a lot of the splashing was going to be and protect the electronics a little bit better. But in doing so, I had to also change to a different style of pump. I'm using a faucet type, which is basically just it's a solenoid, like a plunger pump, but it's just from a different brand, so the fitment's a little bit different than the OEM Honda version. And yeah, you can see that I whipped out the entire freaking harness. So this is something that I planned on digitalizing as much as I could. I wanted to replace a lot of the circuits with less wiring, or just removing redundant wires, as this motorcycle had a lot of those. What I mean by redundant wires is sometimes there'd be 2 or 3 of the exact same wire that would run all the way from the front handlebars all the way to the back lighting, and then just be spliced into one wire right before the signal lights, just as an example. So there's no need to have all 3 wires go back, as it bottlenecks right before the connector anyways. So I just ran a slightly larger wire and just removed a lot of the other ones. So the thickness of the entire harness actually was, the diameter decreased by about 1/4 of an inch by the end of this. In the next video you'll see a lot more of the wiring kind of being wrapped and put into its place before the bike starts. Kind of going through the process of running wires where I think they need to go, loosely fitting them, assembling components the way they need to be, and then rerouting and reattaching using zip ties and tape just to kind of secure things as I go. This was a pretty long iterative process that took a lot of patience, but I don't know if there's anything that I like doing more than just simple wiring circuits. I had probably 30 or 40 different solder joints that I needed to do, as well as just bundling similar circuits together, trying to make sure that all of the wires that go to each connector run the same length, just so I don't have a lot of like extra random wires that I have to crunch up and wrap tape around later. The stock harness for this motorcycle was just so weird. There's a lot of random crimps that were just everywhere. It almost seemed like there was just way too many people working on way too many different parts of the harness, and they all just had to somehow put it all together in the end, and it just ended up being quite a messy stock engine and electrical harness. So I did hear that I was going to have to move just about a month ago, and a lot of the projects that I had planned for the bike were actually going to be had to be a little bit sped up. I had to start getting things back together, even if it meant not doing it the way that I had imagined in the beginning. So some of the circuits and harness work that I was doing is just kind of to try to get it back together and try to get it working reliably again, just so I can actually ride the motorcycle to wherever it ends up next, I guess. But at the loss of being able to do things exactly the way that I want to do it, but that just happens sometimes. Surprisingly, after I had all the electronics put back together, everything except for I believe just some random grounds that I had forgotten to connect, everything else was just worked, which was nice because I did actually cut quite a bit of wire. I ended up putting a bunch of wire in this old plastic jar for zip ties, and I don't know how many feet, but it would have been dozens and dozens of feet of lengths of wire, which in all reality isn't that long if you think about how much wiring is actually on the bike. It took me quite a while to get things even remotely close to how they needed to be in the final wiring. And even at this point, I mentioned that I had the bike started. The wiring still isn't finalized. I've replaced a lot of the connectors that I wanted to do. I wanted to get more of those weatherproof connectors and just make things a little bit nicer, but even in the state where it's been started a few times, it still has a lot of extra wiring at the front because I'm not quite sure if I want to cut everything down and trim it down just so it's like perfect, or do I want a little bit of extra so that I can maybe prepare for any adjustments in the future. There's just like a lot of reconsiderations and reiterations that kind of go on in my head, and I don't know if I'm ever fully happy with the final product. I'm not sure how this video is going to turn out just because of the format and me doing a one-take voiceover of the entire thing, but I hope that it was maybe beneficial to someone. In the next video, I'll be finalizing a lot of the electronics, getting the new grounds all set up, and starting the bike. And hopefully the video is not quite as long as this one, because I believe this was actually most of the work that needed to be done.